listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
So what's new? Hope you're well, and a big thank you for checking out the Straight to Video podcast. Whether you're a regular listener or a new one, every one of you are awesome, as there is a lot of choice out there in the podcasting world, so thank you for choosing this one. Today I bring you a chat with a music legend, a pioneer who during the 1970s helped shape and bring in a style of music which would forever change the landscape, both sonically and also strike right into the establishment, making headlines which we've very rarely seen since. Today's guest, Glen Matlock, was the original bass player for punk rock legends the Sex Pistols, a band like no other at the time and perhaps never seen since. He is credited as songwriter on 10 of the 12 songs on the band's game-changing debut, Nevermind the Bollocks, being part of such anthems as Anarchy in the UK, Pretty Vacant and God Save the Queen. And even after leaving the iconic band in the early days, he would go on to work with an endless stream of music legends, being part of bands like the Rich Kids, Iggy Pop, and most recently landing the bass player role in Blondie with his longtime friend, drummer Clem Burke. Today, Glen has a brand new album, Consequences, coming due for release in April, but its lead single, Head on a Stick, is out now, with its video already on YouTube, and in his own characteristic style, Glen is giving a call to arms and wake-up call to recent political events over the past few years. To find out more about the new album, be sure to visit Glen's website at glenmatlock.co.uk. Today's episode of the Straight to Video podcast is once again proudly presented to you in association with Affinity Photo, an incredible piece of photo editing software which I use for graphic design, and it's used to create the podcast episode artwork which you can see online each week. It's an extremely affordable alternative to other programs on the market, so please show them support and check them out at affinity.serif.com. Alright, let's get into my chat with Glen. I'm always a little unsure how to approach interviews with people with such a rich and long history like Glen has. It would be easy to just dive in and ask about the early days of the Sex Pistols, why he left, but hasn't that been done over and over again? Is that just what people want to hear? That stuff is all out there to be found already. But luckily for me, I think, Glen Matlock is a force of nature, so he kind of just talks about whatever he wants. We chat about the new album, his involvement with Blondie, growing up and introductions to music, and a bunch more fun stuff, as well as him telling me off several times, which I think you'll get a kick out of. So right now, please sit back and enjoy my straight-to-video chat with punk rock pioneer Glen Matlock.
Hello.
How's it going, Glen?
Is that Rob?
It is. How you doing, mate?
Do you know your hair's sticking up?
It is. I tell you, by the time this finishes, it'll be flat.
Mine's gone a bit floppy. How you doing? Where are you?
Nearest city is Nottingham, so I'm right in the Midlands.
Okay, good. I like Nottingham when I've been there. Last time I was there, I was playing with Blondie. Then I had a bit of time to kill and was wandering around the back streets by the castle and all that. I thought it was quite swanky, some of it.
It's a cool city. It's always changing. It's very student-based, like most of these big cities are. But yeah, it's a cool place.
What I like about Nottingham is some of the shops and things. Most places you go, they all look the same. They've all got the same shops in and all that. But Nottingham, it seems to have a bit more of an individuality about it. Also, maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, I was there and I was wandering, there was some square, I don't know what the square was, but there was a stage set up and there was a boxing match about to happen, you know, and the two boxers were doing their bit where they publicising the fight, and the mayor was trying to introduce them, but I was just at the back of the crowd seeing what was going on. And lots of people didn't like the mayor, and they were telling them in no uncertain terms with lots of Anglo-Saxon. It was really funny.
I was actually at that Blondie show.
Oh, cool, good.
My friend Andy plays guitar for you.
Oh, you mates with Andy?
Yeah.
I think he's a really good talent, that guy.
Ridiculously talented, isn't he? Yeah, he just lives and breathes guitar. Yeah, I've known him since, crikey, mid-2000s, like 2006, something like that. You won't remember, but we did meet briefly when you came along to see Clem Burke and his band, The Tearaways, a few years ago at the 100 Club in London.
Oh, okay.
We're all sat backstage for a short while. I was playing in the opening band, signed to Stevie Van Zant's label.
Yeah, I got up and did a number with him. Stevie was there and I wanted to chat with him a bit more.
It was quite a star-studded night, that was. Bob Geldof was there, Nick Hayward.
Geldof was there, Nick Hayward, yeah. I had a funny star-studded night. Through Clem, he used to play with Nancy Sinatra. And then he couldn't do a tour because he was touring with Blondie, but he had a night off. And we went to see Nancy Sinatra. We went backstage and Clem introduced me and she gave me a little kiss on the cheek. And a year later, she was playing somewhere and Clem wasn't there and I went to see her. And I walked in backstage and she went, "Oh, hello, Glenn." She gave me a little kiss on the cheek. Right, go forward a few years. I went to see the opening of Frank Sinatra live at the London Palladium, which sounds funny because he was brown bread. But I had a live band and dancers and had him on the screen and they'd taken the music out and it was jolly good. And it was the opening night and Nancy Sinatra gave like an opening speech and stuff. And then there was a little bit of a do afterwards and I went in there and standing in a circle, most of my story is a bit long-winded but get to the point, was having a night out together with Stevie Van Zandt, Dave Clark from Dave Clark 5, who I know a little bit because he lives where I live. And the time I'd seen that before, I'd seen his backside sticking out the freezer of Cook, which was like one up from Marks and Spencer's, and Nancy Sinatra. And Stevie Van Zandt said hi. Dave Clark said hi, Glenn. And I'm like, oh, Nancy's going to go, oh, hello, Glenn, again, after giving me a kiss on the cheek last time. And she went, who are you?
What was the difference? Had you changed your hair or something?
No, I mean, a few years had gone by and she was probably caught up with having to give a speech about her dad being no longer with us and all that. So I let that one go. But it was just funny. I really thought, right, I'm in, rock royalty.
Just bring you down to earth.
Yeah.
You and Clem obviously go back a long way. What with you recently taking on the role in Blondie, and Clem actually performs on some tracks on your new album.
Yeah, he plays on the first song and the last song, which were the last two songs I wrote for the album, actually. I recorded a lot of it, and then lockdown happened, and I hadn't quite finished it, and I revisited it and did some more things and wrote a couple of new songs. I thought, well, this actually fits. We'd done a few things together. Lots of musicians did things online, not being in the same room or the same town or the same country or the same continent. There was a way of working, so I had these couple of songs. I thought I'd like Clem to be involved. And I said, can you put some drums on it? And he blagged some time at the studio. I sent him a guide guitar thing. He sent me the tracks back and then I went in the studio and finished the songs off. But I'm trying to think when I first met Clem, I think it might well have been when they first came to London. And I actually did that one-off Vicious White Kids gig with Sid and Rat Scabies. And I do remember Blondie coming down.
Was that a well-advertised gig or was it just like a last-minute throw-together thing?
It was a last-minute word-of-mouth sold-out show that we only decided to do less than a week beforehand. It was good. Sid is not Johnny Rotten, but he was a good frontman and singer. But it was all cover versions, like Search and Destroy and I Want to Be Your Dog and Stepping Stone.
But it was one of those that word soon spread, pre-internet and all that kind of stuff, but word got around that people had to be at that show.
And it was rammed. And I remember Paul was there. He got up at the side of the stage. He said, let's have a go. And I'd fallen out with him and I said, fuck off. I think he was there with Steve and he was doing that Greedy Bastards thing at the time and Phil Lynott was there and anyway, I think that might have been the first time I met Clem. Became mates and we just kept in touch and worked on different things over the years. And yeah, so when he called me up to do it, very short notice last year, and I had to make a very split decision and get a work permit together, and which I did do. And I thought, do I want to do it? And I thought, yeah, actually, I do want to do this. So I was on a plane to the States. And then the first gig we did was at the Armadillo in Glasgow in front of 15,000 people. So I was in at the deep end.
Just speaking about the new album, Consequences Come, I mean, just the album and the single title alone lay down a strong reflection of how you see things being run in the world at the moment. Is all the album's songs a comment on the past few years? Is it all fairly new material?
Not all of them, but hopefully I don't repeat myself too much. There's sort of variations on a theme, but, I think we've been stitched up and duffed up politically, and I don't think any right-thinking person can ignore that fact. I kind of wanted the stuff to be out earlier, like middle of last year. I did do a deal with Universal, but that all went a bit tits up. To be honest, I've never been treated so badly by a record company in my life. But now we're cooking vinyl. I'm happy about that. It's coming out. Would have been good if I was possibly one of the first people to say it. But also I did notice yesterday or the day before that good old Cold War Steve, who I really dig, he does lots of cut-ups and he's like the John Hartfield of our times, who was anti-Nazi. He was German, but he changed his name to an English name because he hated the Nazis so much. and he did quite a lot of political collages and things. Look him up. Anyway, I think Steve styles himself on him on a bit, and I think he's very on point most of the time. But he's actually done a video for Sleaford Mods, and they got a song out called, or an album called UK Grim. So you can tell where they're coming from. Similar place, really, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I think they're trying to stifle any dissent. You know, don't mention Brexit. Well, fuck off. I'm going to talk. It's one of the most stupid things that's ever happened in my 66 and a half years, and I'm not an idiot, you know. The best thing that happened to me in my 66 and a half years was freedom of movement in Europe, and it's been untimely wrenched from me. It's a balls ache for no reason apart from keeping the rich people, enable them to keep their hand in the till. It's wrong. It's got to be changed. Whether it will change in my lifetime, I don't know. But I'm not going to shut up about it, and I'm going to sing about it.
Your career has spanned many decades and numerous changes in the industry. And like you say, I mean, you're releasing this new album now and it's on Cooking Vinyl. It does seem like a good place for you now because, I mean, are they releasing your 2 previous records as well?
Yeah, and I've got a few more other ones and all, so we're going to kick it off. That's the idea. So we'll see. But on all my albums, there's some good songs, and they've just fallen on deaf ears, really. And I don't think they've ever been promoted that well. You know, there's a lot of being in the right place at the right time. Maybe I am now.
And give them a new lease of life, putting them out again and getting them in front of people.
Yeah. You know, there's nothing worse than being a songwriter. And I don't mind if people don't like my stuff, but when they don't hear about it, it's kind of quite galling, really, you know. Although, mind you, not the last album, Good to Go, Born Running, this bloke came up to me at a gig and he went, "Oh, great album, that is great driving music." I said, "Well, you know, kind of cool, yeah." I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "Well, I got in my cab." I said, "You're a cab driver?" And he said, "No." He said, "I've got a small fleet of lorries, you know, articulated lorries, that I employ about a dozen people." He said, "I bought 12 copies and made sure they all play it in the cab. All I need is another 100,000 people like that, and I'll have a hit."
Yeah, give me your details. I'll let you know when the next album's out. You can buy another 12 copies every time.
I think I did write it down, but put it on a bit of paper somewhere, didn't I? Which I probably left in my jeans in the wash.
Is the Blondie thing, is that an ongoing thing for you, or was it just a temporary fill-in?
I actually played bass on a new album they're making. I don't know what the finished thing's like because I'm not party to that. You know, I just did the rhythm tracks, but it was interesting. I'm not sure when that's coming out, but we've got another whole bunch of gigs starting second half of March. Mexico City, Lima, Bogota, Coachella in California, somewhere else. And then in June, we got maybe about 10 shows around the UK.
The calendar's filling up already.
Yeah, it's just all... I kind of wanted my record out by now, but because of the Universal connection, it hasn't done. It's coming out now. So we'll work it out.
The Blondie thing is quite last minute. Do you like the pressure to have everything down and go out on tour, like put a fire under you?
What I don't like, what's kind of happened with my record, is a long gestation period and you've got to convince people to help you put it out, and it takes ages. And it's like, you know, you write a song like Head on a Stick last year because somebody pissed you off and you want it out and then it don't come out. It's a frustration. At least with the Blondie thing, they called me up. A few days later, I'm in New York having business discussions. 10 days after that, I'm walking on stage with them. It's immediate, you know. I kind of like doing solo shows as well because A, I like doing them. B, the buck stops with you. It's one down from being a stand-up comic. You know, everything is on your shoulders. I'm not being big-headed, but it's scary, but it's a...
Good scary, in a way.
Good scary, you know, it puts hairs on your chest. But, you know, when you're in a band, you go there and you've got to get all the gear together and there's everybody available on this day and get there and all the equipment, and then the keyboard player ain't got the right lead for his thing and you're hanging around and the drummer's got to do a drum track and he goes, bum, bum. Acoustic thing, you open your guitar case, make sure all the machine heads are in a straight line so it looks like it's in tune and start playing. It's immediate. That's what I like about it.
When was the first time you did that on your own?
Well, first time I did that was a mate of mine, this international corporate law lawyer who spent a lot of time in his Dubai and Kuala Lumpur, but is actually from my neighbourhood. He wanted me to do a few numbers at his 40th birthday in the pub round the corner, so I did. That was that. It's the first time I'd done it.
Yeah.
Bad thing is now this bloke, he turns out he's a complete Tory. He sends me a Christmas card every year. I put it straight in the bin.
You recognise the handwriting on it before you open it?
I open it and it's like, oh, him trying to curry favour again.
Other than playing on your own, though, I mean, is it fun for you to continually play with like different friends and musicians? Does that help you grow and share new experience? Because I mean, looking back on your career, it's quite amazing all the connections you've had.
You know, sometimes, again, you're trying to get your thing going, you're hanging around, and the phone goes and somebody says, come and do this, and you think, well, might as well.
Like, you meet all these people and then you can bring them into your record as well. I mean, the stuff you've done since the Sex Pistols, through the Rich Kids, with Major, Iggy Pop, even getting the chance to play with one of the bands that put you on your path for rock and roll, the Faces.
Well, yeah, and it's like a symbiotic thing, hopefully you get something from playing with them, which you normally do, and you bring something to the table with the way that you play. I mean, working with Earl, the reason I met him, there's a friend of mine, Keenan Dufty, who's a fashion designer, but also fancies himself as a singer, and he can sing, and he called me up, this is a long time, he said, I put some songs up on MySpace.
Game changer, that was.
Yeah, and he said, this bloke's called me up, and he wants to do some work with me, and I said, well, who is it? And he said, Earl Slick. He said, what do you think I should do? I said, well, do it, you nitwit. He said, well, if we do it, could we send you some tapes and you play bass on it? I said, yeah. Anyway, and he called me up a couple of days later and he said, I bumped into Clem, who he knows. And he said, Clem said he put some drums on it. And I said, all right, well, I'll tell you what, if you book a studio, he lives in New York, I'll come over. And we did it. And that's where I met Earl. Then he went, what key's this song in? And Keenan told him, and he got a capo out, right, to put on the guitar. I went, oh, that's cheating. He said, is it going to be like that, Matlock? And I said, yes, it is, right? And we had a laugh and we got on. So that's how I met Earl, through saying yes to do something with somebody else.
Exactly. You never know where something's going to lead or out far down the line. It might be years later before something comes round again and you get that phone call.
Yeah, well, not at all, but yeah. But the Faces thing, that was the band. And it wasn't really the Faces because it wasn't Rod Stewart, but Mick Hucknall did a very good job. But at least I played with Kenny Jones and Ian McLagan and Ronnie Wood, who's probably my all-time favourite guitarist. And it's quite a laugh and all. But it was the band I used to stand in front of the mirror when I was 14. So when I got the gig, not being funny, but it just felt right. And I got that gig through being mates with Ian McLagan, who played on the Rich Kids and did a tour with us.
Have there ever been any tours or gigs you've had to turn down? Perhaps you already had something in the diary and you weren't available and you was like, damn, I would have liked to have done that.
This year I got asked to go out with my band to open up for Stiff Little Fingers around the UK, which I wanted to do and would have done and could have made it all work and it would have helped with the record. But Blondie had these shows coming up and I couldn't let them down.
That's a bit of a juggle, isn't it? It's like these massive shows.
Yeah, these massive shows doing somebody else's stuff or some not quite so big shows with your stuff. But I didn't want to let Blondie down. And then they would have got somebody else and then I probably wouldn't have wanted me to do the other one. So there's all that, Gigs are like buses, you get none and then three come at the same time.
You'll have one date on the calendar and that'll be the thing that clashes.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Why is that?
I have no idea. That is the universe colliding against you for sure.
Yeah.
Could you have ever imagined or dreamed about such a varied music career back when you were just beginning to listen to music back in London in the 60s and early 70s?
Oh, well, started playing in the mid-70s. I'm not that blinking old. Watch it. You young whippersnapper with your sticky up hair, I never really thought past the end of the week. I still don't really. Whatever I planned to do, it hasn't quite worked out like that. And you can let it get on top of you or you can just roll with it. And I've decided to take what steps I can, but you have to roll with it.
How ambitious was you though back then? I mean, was a career in creative arts or music anything that could be considered back then?
I've actually worked, not full-time, but since I was about 11 years old, filling up the shelves in a local shop. In fact, I was really annoyed. The Rolling Stones did a free concert in Hyde Park, and I couldn't go because I had to do Mrs. Brown's and Mrs. Jones's deliveries. I mean, that was annoying.
Still sinks a knife in your heart now when you think about it.
Yeah, I've always worked. We wasn't that well off. I was always fed and stuff, but you want a bit of money in your pocket to go to the cinema with a young lady from the girls' school you fancy, or buy yourself a pair of Stay Press because they're the thing, So there was that.
Did you play acoustic guitar before bass?
The first instrument I had, yeah. And then what I used to do was, and then I bought a pickup for it. Then I started listening to some blues stuff because I used to listen to the Mike Raven blues show. And I remember being about 15 going in to the record store in Oldham trying to get a record that Mike Raven had been going on about, an album about Blind Lemon Jefferson or somebody like that. And I went in there and there was some older hippie guy working there, hey man, like Neil from the thing. Hey, have you got Blind Lemon Jefferson's latest album? And he looked at me like I was a nitwit. He didn't have it. But he recommended this album, The Story of the Blues, which is a double album. And it was The Story of the Blues, right from when they first started recording about 1915, right up to the mid-60s. I'm glad I got that. It was real instrumental in me learning, and then I got playing slide guitar on it. So then I saved up and bought a pickup to put across the sound hole of my guitar, and then I didn't have an amp. And if you took the lead, don't do this at home, folks, but if you unscrewed the end of the jack plug and took the leads off, you could attach them to the leads on the stylus on the gramophone, right? And it worked as an amplifier. You'd be going great, and then your mum would come and she'd go, shut that racket.
I love the story you've told about one of your first bass guitars. I think you've said the first time you actually saw a bass was through your uncle who brought a Fender Jazz into the house, which was maybe only there for a day or so. But one of the first you actually played turned out to be a modified guitar, which had been stripped of its 6 strings and replaced with 4. Had they actually added bass strings to it, or just removed the 2 high guitar strings?
No, they put bass strings on. I think they just put a different nut on. I don't know, it might have been like a copy of a Fender Mustang or something like that.
Where did you get that from?
Bought it off some kid at school for like 15 quid or something like that. And luckily I did, because a couple of months after then, that's when I met Steve and Paul, and I overheard them saying that their bass player didn't turn up. And I went, I play bass.
How much did you play bass at that time?
A bit. I knew my scales.
Through like the 80s and stuff like that. Well, definitely in the 80s, bass kind of got lost a bit in rock music. But back in like the 70s and stuff like that, you could really pick out the bass part.
Well, I mean, the other thing, when I started going out to places, there was a chain of discotheques in London called the Bird's Nest. All the girls drank Pearl Iron Black and the blokes drank Snakebite with a shot of blackcurrant in, and under the UV lights, it all kind of looked a bit kind of weird. But the music then was mainly sort of Tamla Motown, and the bass is really prominent in the mix and all that stuff. And when you've had a few drinks and you're young, your ears start going. And the only thing to me I could really hear was the bass. But the bass, most of it was played by James Jameson.
Yeah.
He was my all-time favourite bass player. I never knew it at the time. And that's kind of what kind of got me, And then I'd listen to the Faces and there'd be Ronnie Lane singing, well, hello. And he's going, they're playing Tracks of My Tears, which is Smokey Robinson's song, which I knew. I thought, that's all kind of interconnected somehow. And then, many years later, there was this great movie came out called Standing in the Shadow of Motown, which is all about the Funk Brothers who played on all that stuff. And then they did a gig. Well, I think they did a little tour, and they played the Festival Hall, and I went to see them. And I ended up backstage. Now, obviously, James Jameson passed away, but his other bass player, I think, took over him, John Boyd Babbitt or something like that. And I met him, and I met the tambourine player who was the leader of the band. I shook hands with him and said, hi, I'm Glenn. I said, you're the leader. And he said, hell, boy, can't you tell? I got the captain's hat on. And he did. And he was guiding the band. So any time there's any tambourine doing it, drummer goes, I say, listen, mate, I'm the bloke who shook hands with the tambourine player who played it on all the Tamla Motown stuff. I'm doing it. I can't argue,
Obviously, you play guitar and sing, but how did you get on with like playing bass and singing?
I can do it. I go to football with my younger son, and I point out to him that being a lead guitarist as a front man is like being a centre forward or an inside left or inside right. Because all the good ones, they're running around and they're pointing because they want the ball there and they want the ball there. And when you're singing, you're the front man and you want the crowd there to join in and the crowd there to join in or go like that and the band stops. And if you're playing bass, you can't do that.
No.
But if you're playing guitar, you can go blam, point. It's kind of a joke, but you can be more of a showman.
Yeah. And I think with playing bass and singing, it's like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it, but it's,
Not only were you like surrounded by such formative and influential music like during the 70s, but you're in London at such an electric time.
Well, hang on there. No, it wasn't an electric time. If you're our age we was and you didn't have much money, which we didn't, you kind of had to make your own thing. And that's kind of how I ended up by happenstance. But putting myself in the right place at the right time, working at Malcolm and Vivian's, and then meeting Steve and Paul, and then John kind of later, and meeting all this crowd of quite happening people who all gravitated there because there was nothing else going on.
Yeah.
So we kind of created what was going on, but it weren't going on until we came along.
So all these people kind of gravitate together, and that's what created this time. It's hard to imagine the impact that had back then, or this pool of like so many people who would like continue to go on to do amazing things. It almost seems like you could throw a stone back then and it would hit a legend who is still around today.
Well, yeah, I mean, out of a kind of coterie of people who were in and out the shop and came to not support us, but cheer us on at the first gigs we did. Susie from the Banshees and Berlin and Steve Severin and Billy Idol. And, nearly everybody went on to do something in some kind of way. In fact, the guy who books, I made the first booking with, although it turned out to be the second gig we ever did, was a guy at Central School of Art. This guy called Alexander McDowell, He now lives in Hollywood and is an artistic designer. He was the first person to actually book the Sex Pistols with his mate, Sebastian Conran, who now runs the Conran Empire. And Alex called me up a couple of years back now. I'm in London. What are you doing? I'm at Pinewood. What are you doing? Star Wars 9. He was the artistic designer of it. He also did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and The Terminal and Watchmen and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Johnny Depp.
Wow.
He was the first person to book the Sex Pistols. And the thing I'm more proud of than the Sex Pistols is being part of that gang of hipsters, really, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you think it comes from like a frustration of, like, say, there wasn't anything when you came around, so that frustration, like, we need to create something? Do you think we're in a world where a scene like that could ever happen again?
Maybe. Don't know. I think the only problem is like what we're doing now, talking to each other on Zoom, which is nothing wrong with that in itself, but I think loads of people do that all the time, full of good ideas, and they're not out and about physically. And back in the punk times, you know, the only way you met somebody was going somewhere on the off chance that something might be good.
Yeah.
And you start bumping into the same people all the time. That's a scene, you know, and it's a real physical and tangible scene. Malcolm was quite good when Anarchy came out, and he said, you know, the best thing a kid can do is not just say I've heard of it and like it, is physically go and buy it and have it in your hand. And, you know, this modern world of tech takes all that away. You know, I've got this record coming out. The album's going to be physical, but it's a digital release. And it's like, you know, a song that you write that has come out of a figment of your imagination goes through all this process, and you handle tape boxes and DAT cassettes and download it and all that. And it normally ends up as a physical piece of thing that you can have. I did that. It's not. You know what it ends up as? A figment of your imagination. It's kind of weird. It's weird.
The immediate thing that comes to me when you said that, with it being a digital release, is like they're losing out on a memory from that because they're not remembering going to a record shop to buy it.
Yeah.
You don't remember when you clicked on Spotify to play that album.
Well, I rarely do that, you know, and I'm not saying people should not do that, but I think it makes it all a bit more inconsequential, you know. And do you know, I think culprits of that, Blinking U2, you know, that whole thing when you signed up to Apple and you got the record for free. You know, I don't dislike U2, and they've always been quite friendly, but some people can afford to give away records, but it devalues what everybody else is doing. Now, I've had some success over the years, but young kids can't do that. And also, as far as putting a new record out, as far as most people are concerned, I'm an old young kid, you know.
It's almost like a catch-22. The world's got smaller and more connected, but I think it takes a small area and a small group of people to make something special and game-changing.
Yeah. On the other hand, you know, my kids are in bands. They're always out and about. I'm sure there is the same going on. They built up followings by doing that. You know, by doing the physical and the digital thing. You know, whatever. It ain't going to go backwards. You can't disinvent the nuclear bomb. It's what it is. So you got to be hip and prosper.
Yeah.
Or not. It's just some things come easier to different age groups.
Glenn, I want to wish you the very best with the new album.
You've had enough of me now. That's nice, isn't it?
What? I know you want to catch some sunlight. I can see it going darker outside my window, which is in front of
Well,
us.
yeah, that's what you get for being further north. It's still relatively bright here, but yeah, I do want to get out the house. So thanks for chatting to us.
I wish you the very best with the album, and maybe catch you in Nottingham next time you come round with Blondie or on your solo dates. It'd be wicked.
That would be good.
Glen Matlock's brand new single, Head on a Stick, is out now, and the new album, Consequences Coming, is out in April. I want to thank Glen for chatting with me on a day which I know he'd already had many interviews, so I appreciate his valuable time. Very cool to speak to someone who's done so much in the industry and continues to forge his own path today. Be sure to keep up to date with everything over at glenmatlock.co.uk for all the album news and any upcoming live shows, either solo or with the legends Blondie. That is all for this episode of the podcast. Make sure to check in every Friday for a new show or catch up on older episodes over at stvpod.com. But for now, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to doing it all again soon.